Most people think that in order to build more muscle mass, the most important thing is actually protein when it comes to your diet. But in actuality, there are two things that are far more important to building muscle mass than protein, right? Protein is actually number three on the hierarchy. So, right out the gate, the first thing that we need to understand about muscle size is that your muscle weight is only 24% made up of protein. The other 76% is made up of water and glucose stored inside the muscle as glycogen. Okay, so the protein that you consume really is only used in order to grow more of that 24% of your muscle's weight, whereas water and glycogen makes up the bulk of the size of the actual muscle. So if you're trying to have larger, fuller muscle and trying to gain more lean weight, the priority then becomes water and carbohydrates, staying hydrated in carbohydrates, right? The suffix in the word carbohydrate is the prime indicator, carbohydrate, right? So for every molecule of glucose is attached three molecules of water, right? And that actually creates the size and the environment with inside the muscle. And that's where all the magic happens as far as producing energy, ATP, muscular contractions, and muscular growth. Now let's talk about how this looks as far as your diet is concerned. As far as your macros are concerned, a minimum of 50% of your total caloric intake should come from carbohydrates. If you're really trying to build mass, muscle size in an optimal form, then you should move that 50% up to 60, maybe even 65%. Because the carbohydrates is going to be the way where you can gain the maximum amount of muscle mass without gaining unnecessary fat along with it. So a lot of guys will increase their caloric intake, and as a result, they'll increase the amount of dietary fat that they consume. And that's what causes you to gain more excess body fat. Now, as far as your muscle is concerned, your muscle only really stores, as far as energy, 1%. Any more than that, you start becoming insulin resistant and flat out type 2 diabetic, which is the reason why the carbohydrates should be the overwhelming dominant force in your diet. Your dietary fat, to be quite honest, only really needs to be around 15 to 20% of your macros, 10% at the least. As far as food choice is concerned, in my opinion, the best food choice for building muscle and staying lean is actually going to be fruit. Because, like muscle mass, fruit is also mostly made up of water and carbohydrates, with a little bit of protein. Secondary to that, then you have other things. You've got legumes. Some of my top favorites are chickpeas or garbanzo beans, black beans, red kidney beans, lentils, and split peas. As far as whole grains are concerned, my top two in particular are rolled oats and basmati rice. Now you can eat brown rice, wild rice, quinoa, things that have higher amounts of fiber, but those keep you fuller longer. And if you're trying to maximize the amount of carbohydrates you take in order to power the muscle growth process, foods that keep you fuller for longer may act as an appetite suppressant and hinder your ability to go back and eat the amount of food that you need in order to grow. Now, fruits are my number one priority as far as where my carbohydrate sources come from. The reason why is because gastric emptying happens at a much faster rate with a meal filled with fruit than something else like a cooked meal, right? And that's because fruit is mostly made out of water, right? Like muscle mass is. Water and carbohydrates are water and glucose. So water and glucose fruits are very compatible with water-rich and glucose-rich muscle mass. Let's give you an illustration here. Let's do some math. 6 bananas, 2 pounds of grapes, and 3 pounds of cantaloupe come out to roughly 381 grams of carbohydrates. Right? That right there will give most of you all of your carbohydrates for the day, or just about, not quite, but pretty close enough. Of course, this is going to depend on what your weight is in lean muscle mass, right? The more muscle you have on you, the more your carbohydrate demands are going to increase, right? Fats and proteins don't really move a whole lot. The name of the game is basically water and carbohydrate storage inside your lean mass. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say you have 60 kilograms of lean mass on you, right? Now, 60 kilograms of lean mass, that's like 132 pounds, right? 1 kilogram of muscle mass can store at least 15 grams of glucose in the form of glycogen. So if you want to do this math, essentially what you would do is you would do 60 multiplied by 15. That'll give you 900, right? As in 900 grams of glucose. Right? So if you're eating 381 in a day or 400 in a day, it's not like you're going to get fat from eating all those carbs. You see what I'm saying? You're nowhere near close enough to 900. Now let's give you an illustration here. 1 gram of carbohydrates has a caloric value of 4 calories, right? So 900 grams of glucose multiplied by 4 to represent the caloric value gives you 3,600 calories, right? 3,600 calories, right, in a day. That's pretty much just from the glucose, just from the carbs alone. Now you may say, well, in order for me to keep my glycogen stores full, does that mean that I have to eat 900 grams of carbs a day? No, that's not what that means. And here's why. In order to actually burn through 100% of your stored glycogen, you'd have to fast for at least 24 hours. All right? So your body actually takes multiple days, like 2 days at least, or typically 2 days, in order to burn through all of your body's stored glycogen, right? Now, the thing is that when you eat a meal, your body's going to be using that fuel over like an 8-hour period. So if you were to eat a meal right now, your body would basically be metabolizing that and digesting that over a period of 8 hours, right? So if you eat every 1 to 3 hours or so, right, obviously you're going to be stacking on. So you're going to have a bit of a backlog of nutrients and energy that your body's going to be tapping into over time as it empties out from your stomach and goes through your whole digestive tract, right? So this is more like a time release thing. But if you're eating, and of course this depends on how much lean mass you have on you, if you're eating a few hundred grams of carbs a day, you get that continuous fuel of glucose to your lean cells, to your lean mass cells, right? Some of it goes to fat cells, but the main priority is it going to your lean mass cells, right? Because that's what your body prioritizes, actually. Whatever goes to fat, that's just whatever is left over, okay? Because your body prioritizes fueling everything. Your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, your liver, your brain, your muscle fibers, the most metabolically active things. Fat is not typically that metabolically active, which is the reason why obesity is such a struggle. It's just not really that metabolically active. And it's the last thing to really get heated up and used for energy because it's a reserve form of energy. It's not the primary source of energy. Primary sources of energy are glucose, and the things that are quickest to use that is your lean mass, your organs, and things of that nature, right? So that pretty much covers it. Last thing I'll leave with is this. As far as energy usage is concerned, again, we're talking about building lean muscle mass. And this is this is probably the most important thing that you can do in your life for your physiology is build lean mass. This will protect you from heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, cancer, hormonal imbalances, all kinds of things, right? It's building the infrastructure of your body, thickening your bones, your muscle mass, strengthening your tendons, ligaments, etc. Okay, because the lean mass that you build today, you will carry that for the rest of your life, and it will protect you from injury and degeneration when you're much older, right? So if you want to extend your longevity, building muscle mass is a primary concern. Now, if you're trying to lose weight, that's probably a different video that we're talking about, because if you're trying to lose weight, well, then it becomes advantageous to limit glycogen storage or limit the amount of glucose in your diet, right? And that's where like a glucose deficit comes in order to drop your blood sugar, in order to tap into more stored fat to burn that for energy. As far as exercise is concerned, weightlifting, resistance training doesn't really burn fat because it's an anaerobic exercise. Anaerobic exercise is what builds muscle, right? Building muscle, as far as your training is concerned, it's all about effort. How hard can you push a muscle to get your body to respond by then reinforcing that muscle and increasing its density and size? Whereas for weight loss, then the most advantageous thing becomes aerobic exercise, something that where you don't run out of oxygen. Anaerobic means a lack of oxygen, aerobic means an abundance of oxygen. The type of exercise that works the best for burning fat is actually the exercise that doesn't cause you to be out of breath. Walking, for example, is the king of fat burn. It's not about how many calories overall you burn, it's about what source of energy are you burning? Are you prioritizing burning glucose or muscle glycogen, or are you prioritizing burning fat using a tremendous amount of oxygen? Because in order to burn fat, it requires a tremendous amount of oxygen. Right? So that's pretty much the last thing I'll leave off with there. And I think these are the most important things to talk about when it comes to building muscle. And again, I just have to state, this is the reason why it is so advantageous to build your muscle mass using a raw vegan or high raw vegan diet. Hit the link in the description below to book a call with me. And subscribe for more high raw vegan, plant-based diet tips.